with the... Okay, just a small note, everybody. We're live streaming this session on YouTube, and therefore it will also be recorded. So we hope you're okay with that. We might use snippets of it in our work eventually later, but nothing really for major public viewing.
Yeah, we're live.
Okay, thank you, Misha.
So I'm gonna make you host and
make Abhi the host.
Okay, I'll make Abhi the host. But you have, where are you? Do you also need to be co-host, right? Where are you?
Okay.
Okay, I think all's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're good to go. We have enough people to start, I think. Right? I'll go ahead and begin. So yeah, welcome again. I'm Shonali. I'm from Early Bird. At Early Bird, we do a bunch of different fun things. We do a lot of games, which is why we're very excited and kicked about this session. Yeah, we really use a lot of play and art in the education tools that we develop, and we have it in very many Indian languages. Let me just kick off by telling you a little bit about Early Bird and what we do. Just 1 second. I hope you can all see my screen. Okay. Is my screen visible to everybody and am I audible? Just like move around. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So here we are. This is our session today on games and nature education. And yeah, we're going to take a little tour around people who are using games in education, as specifically nature education in India today. And we have three very, very remarkable creative people who are with us, and they're going to share their games and their approach and their process. So really looking forward to that. So about Early Bird, we're a non-profit, and essentially our mission is to take birds and bird watching to everybody. And we do that through activities, games, art-based experiences, bird walks, of course. And yeah, we are really inspired by people who also use innovative education tools. And the whole idea for us is to grow a community of nature educators in India. And we're doing that slowly but surely in several ways. So our learning tools are for all ages, though we focus on kids. And most of our resources are open source. You can find them and download a lot of them from our website. We'll share links to all of that later on. So apart from the actual learning tools, we also have trainings and sort of capacity building sessions with educators, not just people who are already teaching about nature, but any like a 5th standard teacher who wants to take a classroom outside or look at birds in their school campus. So we help educators who are non-birders even get started with this whole journey of engaging kids using birds and bird watching. So we have a workshop called How to Be a Birding Buddy, which we've done over the last maybe 4 or 5 years, through which we've had the pleasure of being in touch and engaging with more than 400 educators in India. And this is a community of birding buddies, of which a lot of you are a part of. And through this process, we've collaborated with different local groups and organizations from across the country, which has been great. After the pandemic, we've also adapted this to an online session, which we've done a couple of times. Yeah, here are some snapshots from in-person birding buddy sessions. And then we have something called the Handbook for Bird Educators. It's a very beautifully illustrated book with tips and tricks, ideas, activities, and approaches to bird education specifically and from an Indian context. And this is kind of like a compilation of our experiences and what we've learned from Indian educators over the years. And we're really proud of the fact that it's been downloaded in almost all the continents of the world. And yeah, it's also available free on our website. And if you want if you're a print and a hard copy person, that's available too. Yeah, so bringing us to this session today, we've been doing a series of online sessions on different aspects of nature education. And today we're going to look at games and gamification and using play and how this can create powerful learning experiences and connect your audiences or learners with nature. Yeah, I'm going to just hand the talking over to Abhisheka, who will tell us a bit about the scope of games in conservation and conservation education.
Thanks, Shonali. Let's take a quick look at how games can be used in the conservation sector. One is to spark a connection, and that's what we at Early Bird are engaged in, to kind of connect children or even adults to nature through various games, such as the example here that we have shown is a set of 40 flashcards on common birds of India. And there are other groups like Nature Classrooms, which is also engaged in creating materials to spark a connection with nature. And also our speakers today will be speaking a lot about this. And next, Shonali. Games can also be used to teach ecological principles, some of these ecological concepts such as mimicry, camouflage, or prey-predator relationships. These are few things that can be taught through games that can be played physically. Next. Then games can also be used to communicate research. There are some of the science-based games available in the market right now, such as Wingspan and Evolution. And this is an example of a game that was developed by ecologist Preeti and Prasad, who's a freelance game designer. So basically, they wanted to bring Preeti's PhD work to more people, to the public. And so the way the game has been designed is where basically the game is based on mixed species bird flocks, and then here the players build their own mixed species bird flocks using some of these rules derived from ecological principles. Next. So for those who are working in the conservation sector, human-wildlife conflict is something that we often have to deal with. So here's an example by Wildlife Conservation Trust, where they run education programs in rural areas. And here, basically, through games, they're trying to get children to understand the kind of wildlife that shares their neighborhood, about food chain, and the causes of human-animal interactions, and how to respond in such situations, as well as, kind of trying to create empathy for this wildlife. Basically, this game is where they're trying to, kind of understand the kind of human-made obstacles that wildlife have to navigate. And let's quickly take a look at this video.
सुरू करूया ये पुढे स्टार्ट
So in this video, the blindfolded child plays the role of a wild boar, which is forced to cross several man-made hurdles to reach a source of water. So I'll stop at this and we'll listen to our speakers and their experiences of using games for nature education. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you, Abhi. So yeah, with that little introduction to our session today, we'll jump right to our first speaker, Peeyush Arya. He's an independent, he works independently. His day job is, he's an architect and a geographer. He calls himself a wannabe illustrator, which I find lovely. And he's very interested in pedagogy. And since the pandemic or during, he's been working with multidisciplinary teams, and he's developed card games and board games for which he'll tell you about, all on various species and different animal groups to learn about them. So that's a little bit about Peeyush, and I welcome him to share his work and his games with us. Peeyush, are you unmuted?
Thanks, Shonali, and thanks, folks at Early Bird for this invitation. So without any loss of time, we'll jump straight into my presentation. Next, please. So for everybody, I hope you all have something where you can note this. What I would like you all to do is to match column A to column B, and you could simply note your answers down as one and the corresponding alphabet. So which are the patterns that match the most on between 1, 2, 3, 4 and A, B, C, D. So maybe I can give you 30 seconds to pick your choices. We'll of course also see the answers later, but these are, of course, fairly common snakes for anybody who is working on snakes, or, of course, is interested in issues of snake bite education. Okay, can we move to the next? Here I want you all to state whether the snake is venomous, which is B, non-venomous, which is A, or mildly venomous, which is C. There are 9 snake species, again, fairly common ones. Have you all made your lists? Shonali, we can maybe move to the next slide. Okay, so here are the answers, and maybe you can quickly check how many you got right. And so this is totally 13 questions, right? So if you could quickly check how many you got right, and maybe use the chat box to state your honest performance. Oh my God, somebody has responded with nil. I'm sorry for that. Oh, excellent. 12 to 13. Wow, that's the highest score. We're getting there. Excellent. So thanks, everybody. In some sense, these are some of the questions we were trying to answer without not necessarily knowing that is what we were doing when we were working. You can take us to the next slide. Yeah. So we actually, during the pandemic, with a group of friends, and I'll quickly name them, there's Shubham from Wasa, Amravati, Jose Lewis from Indian Snakes, Parikshit, who helped us with the content, 𝗕𝗫 Jha and Khyati, who designed the game for us. We did this snakes and ladders game, which is only snakes, no ladders. And for the longest time, I felt that this is such a unfortunate game, the snakes and ladders in the conventional sense, where every time you come onto a snake, you sort of suffer, and it only reinforces misconceptions about snakes. And we decided to try and work with the same very popular format. And in some sense, of course, we are not covering everything, but we're covering the common 9 species, some of which are confused with one another, and which often suffer at the hands of misidentification and the problems we have. Though focus actually is more on human behavior, not so much on the fact that you stepped on a venomous snake. So although you may step on a cobra hood and have to slip down, it is accompanied by a message which says that saw cobra, harassed the snake, got bitten. So the idea is that the messaging is not so much on venomous, non-venomous, but it's more on human behavior, with a focus also on trying to communicate certain ideas, but in a fun way. And we did this in 3 languages, Hindi, Marathi, and English to start with. Next slide, please. And we did this in 3 sizes. So you can see that there's a small board-sized game. And then there is a medium-sized game, which about a group of 10 people can actually stand around and watch while 3 or 4 people are playing. And then there is this large format game where you have, like a small group of maybe 20 people can actually participate while 3 or 4 are playing. We printed this on cloth. It makes our life much easier in the sense that the packaging is light, people love it. It's washable and you can dry it and reuse it. Next slide. Here you can see the most interesting one is on the right-hand side bottom. This is actually schools called 𝗔𝗯nci𝘂𝘁𝗆 that are run by the 𝗦𝗽𝗲𝗆𝗆 Aandolan. We've been trying to send games to institutions like this, and there have actually been unfortunate cases of children dying, a couple of children dying of snake bite in these very remote locations. So we did a combination of a snake rescue kit, some training, and the games, and we've got a really good response from them. Next slide. I will be sharing details on where these can be bought from or requested for. This is an urban crowd, typically, in any urban setting, young people enjoying the game. The large size allows us to sort of physically engage with the game too. We have a larger format which was specifically made where children can actually walk. So you actually have children walking from one square to the other. Next slide. Okay, so this is another game that we developed. But before I get onto the game, I want you to answer these questions for me. So, of course, the first question, you can choose whatever you think is the diversity of turtle and tortoise species in India. 1, A, B, C, or D. And for the second one, I would want you all to say what would be the number for A, for B, for C, and D. You can use the chat box, or you can just note. Okay. Can we move to the next one? Okay. So before I give you the answers, the game that I'm showing you now is called 𝗕𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆. It's a game, a card game on turtles and tortoises of India. And I'll talk a little more about it. Let's move to the next slide. So India actually is home to 36 species of turtles and tortoises, which include freshwater, land, marine, and exotic invasives. And honestly, when I first came to know that we had this variety or diversity of turtles in India, I was shocked. And I said, look, I had no clue that we have so much diversity. And in some sense, the seed of the idea came about here. Of course, you probably make out that this is a trump card type of game. We can go to the next slide. So typically what you see here is that there are 5 playable parameters: shell length, weight, clutch size, conservation status, and threat score. And you can see in the layout, you've got the common name, the scientific name, then local names in the local language, a small 3-4 lines on the species. And at the bottom, you see diet, habitat, as well as a geographical location. And certain cards have the joker and certain others have the devil. So the 2 exotic invasives are devil cards. So if you get those, how much ever your parameter score, maybe you will always lose them. So it's to try and reinforce or introduce this idea that it's not a good idea to have those 2 exotic invasives. And the joker, of course, emphasizes something unique, that either it's, say, the largest, or it can actually survive in fresh water as well as salt water, or it is the most critically endangered, or it's extinct in the wild kind of features. Those are the joker features. And, of course, it took a lot of effort from a very talented and dedicated team of people to put this together. I had named them in the first slide when I was talking of 𝗕𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆. But I just want to emphasize that we really need multidisciplinary teams, and we need to work with a range of people to be able to come out with these kind of products. Next slide. So, well, there are the details for anybody who may want to order or make inquiries about the 2 games. We'll also put them in the chat box, because I can imagine that it's difficult for you all to, copy it from here in a short time. But maybe I'll just leave the slide on, and Shonali, I'm done.
Okay. Thanks so much. This was great. I really want to play this 𝗕𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆 game. I've played the snake-a-do, and it's a lot of fun. I have a little copy. Thanks so much, Peeyush, for sharing your work. This is really exciting. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who are going to want these games. I'm going to, Peeyush will stay with us. If you'll have any questions on the work that he shared, you can type it in the chat box, and we will have a small segment at the end of the session where we all can ask and we can discuss your questions and thoughts. So moving right on to Sujatha. So Sujatha has been a member of 𝗘𝗿𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆 and sort of specializes in developing localized education programs and she has done so in several regions across the country. She likes to adapt games that she learned as a child, she says, which is great because she's going to share one of the games called Tulo, I think, with us today, which is a super cool concept and a cool way to teach about a complex issue. Sujatha loves to create fun learning experiences, especially to teach kids about nature. So please tell us more about your work and the games that you worked on.
Yeah, so of course, thanks to the Early Bird team for organizing this and having 𝗘𝗿𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆 over. Can move to the next, I think. I first started developing nature games in Ladakh. This was when we were developing a biodiversity conservation education program. 𝗘𝗿𝗆𝗆 had been invited by a local organization there called the Snow Leopard Conservancy India Trust. This is in 2006, so it is many years ago. But we developed a program for government schools, which the organization chose. And all of them were in Leh district. Few of them, were schools that did not even have road access. When I think back, Early Bird did ask us to say why, what was our origin story? And when I do think back about why we did this, one, of course, is what you already mentioned. I did think back of the fun I had when playing games as a kid. And definitely we wanted children to enjoy the program, to have fun, to laugh, to talk about it, to remember it, and to want us to come back. The program was conducted in schools over a year and a half, and we kept meeting the kids every 2 months or so. The other important reason for Ladakh was the fact that it's a very vast terrain. So we realized that the chances of actually seeing wildlife around all species are a bit. It's your luck. They actually just may be something in the mountains, but you may not see it. And also, there is a lot of variation. It depends actually on the altitude at which you're living in. So while kids were quite familiar with species that were found around human habitations, there was a lot more that they wanted to learn about and they needed to get familiar with. Next. I'd like to start off with Fauna Bingo because this was the game that was most enjoyed by the kids. We designed these really simple cards. I think I really don't need to explain how bingo is played. It's basically like some people call it 𝗰𝗇𝗆𝗍 or Tambola, which you play with numbers. So we had each a card with 9 species for each child, and the cards varied a little bit. With whoever was conducting it had the individual cards with them. Of course, the idea was to get children familiar with the names, and in Ladakh the medium of instruction was English, so we were also told that the kids need to pick up English names, the educators would do a variety of things. You pick a card out. It was not just saying the name, but sometimes you just made you maybe if it was a bird, you imitated the call and asked kids to guess, or you gave a few clues and asked kids to guess. So there was kind of a variety in the way it was played. And this was one game which in Ladakh, once we played it once, the kids would not allow us to leave. They'd be encores, and we never left to school without playing it thrice. And I would notice that the teachers would actually come and join this game as backbenchers, like right at the end, and ask for individual cards themselves. We also did this Fauna Bingo on the request of local NGOs in Kutch. So there's also a Kutch version. We had a collaboration with LWF, and it was developed with them for schools in central India. And Peeyush has been a great supporter of our work, and he actually has worked with NGOs in Rajasthan and has taken a version of the game there. So it's been nice to see that a simple game like this can bring a lot of joy to kids. Next. Okay, so this was again something from Ladakh. We had a whole unit about the snow leopard, and part of it was about how the snow leopard is adapted to living at such altitudes in the cold, and also how it manages the terrain, the steep terrain. And the tail actually plays a significant part. So when this unit was being done, we linked it to one game where we just suddenly told the kids that, you know, when we were coming to your school, we found this snow leopard who had lost its tail and it was like crying. So we said, okay, hop on, come to the car. Maybe the kids in this school will help you find it. And like the kids just didn't know what we were talking about, a snow leopard that's lost its tail, and they brought it. And we would ask them, of course, are you willing to help the snow leopard? Because it needs its tail for these functions. And they would say yes. And then we would bring out this huge cardboard of the snow leopard. And the tail would be given to each child. And then it was just a simple tailing the snow leopard. Children would be blindfolded. And yeah, I think there's a short video which you can share. This from Ladakh.
वैष्णवी इकडे या.
Next. Yeah, so card games, we did quite a few. I'm just sharing two, which is, you know, the way we all played card games, some of them like a memory game is what we called it, with the regular playing cards. So you place them face down. So what we did here was a simple one, which is called find the pair. Children pick up two, and if they are the same species, they make the pair and they take it. And otherwise you turn it back, you put it face down again, but you have to remember what you've kept where. So you slowly get used to the names, and you learn about species that you didn't know earlier. A slight variation of this was who eats what. So if, for example, you pick up a grass card and a marmot card, then that makes a pair and you can take it. Yeah. Next. This is, I think Peeyush made a very important point, which is a focus on human behavior in his presentation. We did this like towards the end of the program with the kids. It's basically a board game called Act Now. The artist, I think, tried to, 𝗦𝗽𝗲𝗆, tried to make the shape of the suggestion of a mammal in this game. And there's a start point and a finish point, and kids sit around it and play with dice and counters. Basically, if you fall on the blue or the yellow, you pick up a card from one of two piles, which have actions. Some of them support conservation of wildlife, and some of them are detrimental to wildlife. And these are actions that we just put together, which reflected what was happening in Ladakh at that time. I've just put a sample here. For example, you drive off the road. This used to happen a lot in Chamtang. And at that altitude, there are just these small grasses and very small plants which were getting destroyed. So it just says you're a taxi driver and you go off the road. And then if you get that card, then you go back a step in the game. And or if it's a positive example, for example, you actually carry back the trash which you find on a trekking route. We used to find on trekking routes, sometimes trash is hidden under a tree, or, things like that. or the one below, you miss a turn because you take a nap when you're out grazing your animals, and then one of them gets picked up and carried away by a predator. But to actually make this fun and not serious all about, okay, positive actions and negative actions, we had all play, which if a child landed on that, then all kids, the entire class plays this. And there we had like some fun cards. For example, again, I've just got a sample here. Imitate the call of a magpie. So you have the whole class trying to do it. Or move like a lizard. You're a donkey taking a sand bath. So you suddenly have all 20 kids on the floor on their back and braying like a donkey and kicking up their hands and legs. Or imitate a snow leopard on a hunt. Then they're like suddenly very quiet and they're like trying to imagine how the snow leopard would move. Yeah, next. So this was a game we developed for 𝗘𝗿𝗆. We did this because the NGOs had been given this mandate by the government that in a select number of government schools, they wanted educational material. They wanted to create these kind of special learning centers in some of the primary schools. So the mandate we were given is that while you're developing wildlife related cards, let them also encourage children to read. Let it somewhere support a little bit of reading. So we created dominoes. So there are 30 individual cards. I've just kind of piled them here, but basically each card is divided into two. So on the left, you have the illustration of some species. On the right, you have the name of another species. And I'll show you how it's played. Next. Yeah, so children sit in a circle. Maybe depending on the class strength, you can have maybe 4 or 5 or 6 kids sitting around with the 30 cards in front. A child starts, picks up any card and places it on the floor. The second child has to actually read the name that's given here and find from the pile the card that has the illustration of vulture. So once the child finds that, next, places it alongside. Then the third child would look at the name here, which is hyena, again search for the hyena card, and next, place it alongside. And the fourth, fifth, sixth child would, the game just continues like that. Shonali, I think you can just, yeah. And so basically this forms like in the center, it forms a nice pattern and it can go any which way. The child can orient the card in any direction. So in the end, it just forms a nice pattern. Yeah. Next. Yeah. This is the game that Shonali was referring to. This was linked to pressure on natural resources, grasslands. We also thought it was important to create games which did not depend on material when you're working in government schools, and also when you want to promote ideas. It's often easy if you can actually also think of games where you don't need any material, which is sometimes expensive or difficult to procure. So this is Tulo. I think many of you would have played this game as a kid, where it has many names in India, Gitti or Panketa or Kuka in different regions. So over there they call it Tulo. You have stones and then you throw one up, and before it falls down and you catch it, you pick one and then you catch that. Then you throw it and you pick 2. So we just did a variation of this. Children sat in a circle. There was a circle created and we placed a fixed number which they knew. So say it was 60, for example, which depended on the strength of the class. We first called in the first round maybe just 3 or 4 kids, and they played this game, and we wrote down exactly how many stones they managed to procure. They all play at the same time. And in the second round, you call a few more kids, maybe 3 or 4 more. So now you have 7 or 8 kids playing with the same 60 stones. Write down the scores again of all the 6 or 7. Then in the third round, you call a few more kids, again playing with 60 stones. So then you write down the scores. And right in the end, we used to have this table with all the scores against each individual child's name. And then you just get the children to analyze it. You know, and invariably, almost invariably, it would be a downward curve. So you start with more, and then with every round that you have less and less, and then initiate a discussion on pressure on natural resources or grasslands. So there were a few games like this that we did, which didn't require any. There was, I think Peeyush again mentioned Abhi mentioned human-wildlife conflict. There was a game that we also did which didn't require any special material. And I'd just like to end by saying that since I've shared so many games from Ladakh, which then we have helped groups who have wanted them by sharing sometimes the illustrations that we have, sometimes just the templates, so that they can create it for their areas. But the Ladakh one, I'd like to mention the entire snow leopard conservation team that was there during the work, and especially Sering Angmo, who was a colleague I worked with for many years, and Yashodhara, my colleague in 𝗘𝗿𝗆, and Sharmila Dev, both of them who helped with the Ladakh work. Thanks.
Thank you. That was these games are great. I mean, I'm such a big fan after I heard of this Tulo game and how you used it. Yeah, thank you so much. So I actually wanted to have one question. Maybe I will ask it later in the question answer. But thank you so much for sharing these wonderful games and work. It's really impressive, and it really comes through how fun and easy it is to connect with children and communities at large when you're playing with each other. And so I think that's great. So what do we have? Oh yeah, now we're going to play a little bit with everybody. We have just a few games. So as Abhi might have shown you earlier, we have Early Bird has these flashcards called What's That Bird? Or 𝗕𝗆 parichai in Hindi. And so using these flashcards of ours, we've created a series of games, which we did on our social media. We have just a sampling of that for you in this session here today. So we're going to launch a poll and take you through some questions, and you all can click on answers and tell us what you'll think. So I'll just request Abhi to launch the poll when I go to the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, one second. Okay, so can you all see the poll? Oh. Oh. So the first question is, are you able to click on the questions? I'm sorry, I cannot see the chat box because my screen is shared.
Yes, Shonali.
Yeah, we can click on the options.
Yes, no.
Okay, all the questions seem to have come at once, so we'll take them one at a time. So the first is, this is a Baya weaver, and the question is true or false? I reuse the same nest every year. All right, did you all guys click on that? I'll move to the next question.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we have a tailor bird, a black drongo, and a house sparrow. And the question is, I am, despite my small size, I am bold and often seen attacking larger birds, even eagles that enter my territory. So which bird do you think that could be of the three? All right. Okay, I'm just gonna go to the next question if you all are done. Okay, what do we have here? We have the 𝗘𝗿𝗆, which is our resident city dweller, at least in Bangalore where I live. So the question is, I'm all over the city and my favorite food is dash. Okay, so fruits, insects and spiders, or grains. I hope you all are still able to click on the poll.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. The picture gives it away a little bit, but it's okay. All right, what do we have next? Okay, so these are 3 different birds who have very different adaptations. The duck has these webbed feet, the swamp hen has these large feet, and a heron also these long legs and feet. So the question is, we have different adaptations for the same habitat. Is it a forest, a grassland, or a wetland? All right. And finally, I'm going to take us to the last question. I'm going to play a bird call, and you can guess which bird is making that call or sound of the 3 that I hear. Okay. Maybe most of you are familiar with these calls in your gardens and compounds. All right, I think that was the last of the game. The poll has disappeared from my screen. So I don't know, Abhi, if you are able to still see it and can.
Yes, I'm going to end the poll right now.
Okay, that was just a sample of a game that we played. So we had a game. Oh, here we go. So the buyer does the buyer reuse the same nest every year? Can you all see the poll answers as well?
Yes.
Okay. So the buyer is famously known for building its nest every year, and also and how it uses this nest building itself as a courtship like strategy to attract the females. So it does. So false is correct. Most of you got that. Then we have the bird that attacks larger birds. Most of you have said the black drongo, which is absolutely true. It's notorious and is very, it's quite famous or infamous for defending its territory and getting even quite big birds out there. So yeah, that's about right. Then we have, what does the 𝗘𝗿𝗆 eat? What is the favorite food of the 𝗘𝗿? So yeah, fruits. The 𝗘𝗿 loves fruits and is a fruit eater. Largely, predominantly, it would feed its chicks insects and like while it's growing up, because it needs protein. But as an adult, they love and prefer fruits. Yeah. All right, what do we have? Okay, so we have the different adaptations to the same habitat. Most of you have said wetlands, and that's right. Or the heron, swamp hen, and ducks all live in and around water bodies, and interestingly have such complex and beautifully different adaptations to the same habitat. So that's a nice way to bring out habitat when we play this game. And finally, guess the bird. You'll all said, most people have said actually, red-vented bulbul, which is correct. The lovely watery tones of the bulbul's calls are familiar to all of us, even when we sit in our homes or work at a desk. So yeah, those are a few games. Like we gave you a sampling. So we had a series of games on habitat, a series of games on calls, a series of games on diet, and a series on behavior. So and this is fun ways for us to get kids interested in the birds that they usually see around them. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that little bit from our flashcards. Now we come to Yuvan. Yuvan, also a writer. We have said quite a few writers with us today, all of our speakers. So Yuvan is a writer, naturalist, and nature educator. He does a wonderful column called a naturalist column, which has some beautiful writing about the natural world, especially from personal experience, which makes it all the more interesting. He also, he's an activist and has received the Sanctuary Asia Green Teacher Award. But his work itself is so diverse and spans so many different themes. He loves working with children, and he's the founder of 𝗕𝗿𝗆 Trust for Nature Education. So I invite Yuvan to give us more insight into your work and your practice of nature education.
Hey everybody. Nice to be here. At the outset, let me say I'm a hoarder of early bird booklets. I at least buy and distribute about a few hundred for classes, for walks, field trips, all of that. So let me dive in. I want to give some biological context for play, and which is that lots of animals play. In fact, all creatures with the central nervous system plays. And there's an interesting podcast, perhaps one of my favorite, on neuroscience by Andrew Huberman. You can find that on YouTube. Perhaps some of you already watch it. And he talks about a play as this space where usually the young of the species practice roles, behaviors, values, different things in a low risk environment. So they are able to kind of translate it into a kind of a lived reality or a high risk environment, actual life and so on. That is interesting because the role of play in our brain is to actually figure out our identity, also play different roles, encode certain behaviors and values, which we then learn to apply elsewhere. So it becomes important for us as educators to understand and also deeply observe how we play, how children play, and what they play, and also that the fact that they can translate this into real life. That role is strongly there. So for instance, there's some very good literature on video games normalizing aggression and so on. So that's kind of like the context for this whole thing. And also to point out that we often sideline play, games, and not just, I'm not talking about sports, but the act of playing is sidelined. But looking at it biologically, it's kind of central, especially in the early phase of childhood. Can we go to the next? Okay, so I'm going to describe to you one of the games we've created, and this has been brought out by 𝗕𝗿𝗆 Trust and Madras Naturalist Society. And the people who create these games are Charlotte, Rohit, Nandita, and myself. And the genesis ideas for this game came out of the fact from different places. One of them being that I also teach in a Montessori school, and there they have these "Who Am I" cards. Now, these "Who Am I" cards, children love playing with it. It's polar bear, salmon, something else, all species not found in India. Second thing is usual game playing. So for instance, the trump card way of playing a game, the values in the game is largely more points than the other, sort of a thing. So something we thought about deeply before creating this game was, how do we play based on ecological principles, similar to what Sujatha shared on Tulo. And to actually use it in the play, if that was part of the gamification of this thing. So we created Wilderness. I'll tell you how it's played and also a little bit of takeoffs from that. Next, Shonali. this version of the game has 4 habitats. So it's the beach, marshland, coastal wetland, and the ocean. Now I understand the cards are a bit small right here, but if you see on top, there are 7, that's 7, right? Yeah, 7 ecological roles in each habitat. So it could be, autotroph, it could be ecological architect, detritive or omnivore, carnivore, and so on. And then there are zones which creatures occupy within these habitats, which some of them are similar, some of them are not. So in the ocean, you have the shallow, mid, and deep, aerial, floating, underwater, and marshland, and so on. The idea of the game is that 2 to 4 people can play it, and you have, so I mean, these are pretty large cards. If you look at a card, next one. You play as one of the habitats. Now, there have been some kids who have mixed up different card sets, and you'll see a picture of 12 of them sitting together and playing this game, but it typically meant for 2 to 4 people to play. And you play as one of the habitats, and the idea is to form an entire balanced, thriving ecosystem. So cards are mixed up very well, because these are 120 cards, not a 56 deck. So just the very first time you got to shuffle like hell. So after that, cards are dealt, and then you have 3 cards in your hand. You can have up till 5 by drawing from the deck. You can't have more than 5. And during your turn, you could put something in your ecosystem. So there are some species which are found in multiple ecosystems, some very specific to certain ecosystems, and they have their roles. You can put something in your habitat. You can draw a card. You can discard a card which is useless for you. Or next slide, please. You can play an action card. Now, all these action cards, most of them are kind of habitat based and have some ecological relevance to it. Some of them not, like this exchange ecosystem. So you have, for instance, a card called mutualism. Now somebody else has a card which is useful for you, and you have a card which is useful for them. You say, hey, we exchange cards. There's a clownfish and a sea anemone there just to depict it. You can play an action card, or you can make somebody's life miserable. We have cards like trawling and pollution and a bunch of other stuff, port building, stuff like that, where you can actually sabotage somebody's ecosystem. And the point of the game is, so as the rounds go on, you have to complete the entire ecosystem and make sure all the roles are filled, all the zones are filled as well. And so the person who finishes that first, according to our rule book, is called the lead naturalist, not a winner. But people end up calling themselves the winner. But that's one of the ways to play this game. But can we go to the next slide? That is the ecosystem game. Now, all these cards also have, they can be used like flashcards. So if we have a manta ray, it shows its diet, it shows its zone, and a few facts about it. All of these are largely Tamil Nadu based, of course, applicable in other areas of India too. And one of the exciting things is sometimes we're playing outdoors and there's an arboreal ant coming by. It's like, oh, I have that card, or that's in my ecosystem sort of thing. But there are multiple ways. So there's a 4-year-old girl there who has been playing it in all sorts of things. She's the ecosystem game is 8 years and above. So she's been grouping the creatures in birds together, the zones together, the carnivores together, and kind of playing it in her own imaginary way. Other people have, so if you see the leftmost picture here, they have mixed up 2 or 3 card sets, and there's a huge group playing this game. And then the first picture on the top left is a session with teachers from my school, where we are looking at different ways of applying these cards in what we do in the classroom, and so on. Yeah. So I am at the end of my talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hmm.
This is so cool. I think the coolest thing about it is how it can be adapted and you can play your own games with it. That's pretty incredible. So you never really know everything at any point. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Yuvan. That brings us to the end of our speakers' presentations. We now have some time for questions, or thoughts that you want to share. Any comments? You can raise your hand if you all know how to do that. There's a reaction button at the bottom of your screen. You can raise your hand, and we will happy to unmute you, so we can have a small discussion with one another. Alternatively, you can also put your question in the chat box and we'll read it out. Okay, I'm just looking at the chat box. Okay. Abhi, if there are any questions that you saw in the session, please just feel free to share them.
There were a couple of questions, but they were already answered. So.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, hi. I'm Deepika.
Yes.
I want to just thank you, or each one of you, I mean, the speakers and the games which have been introduced. I'm a teacher, geography and environment management teacher in Pune Learning Center. So, I mean, I really got interested in Yuvan game, which I would really like to know how can we, where can we reach it, and how can we, where can we buy it? And
That is a
secondly,
good question. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So actually, I had asked 2-3 questions here. I mean, do we have games which are based on contribution of flora fauna to our world, especially ecosystem services? Otherwise, it's very difficult for children to really understand ecosystem services, and that too in a span of human lifetime. So I was wondering, even attached to that could be a question which is like, how do you cost the product? Like, I mean, we're talking about circular economy, but I mean, I don't know, it's so far off from today's possibilities. So whether, costing of products which could be based on, I mean, a game which could take into consideration the costing of recycling or maintaining the waste dumps or even the lost ecosystem services because of the habitat destruction. How does something like filtering of some what do you call, some heavy metals or even pollution, how it's taken care by various biodiverse flora and fauna available on various habitats. In Bangalore, we have, say, Hasargeta grasslands, which are like in question right now today. Whether, there are so much being voiced on whether, should we allow anything on that. But when you see a grassland in the way definition of forest is in India, grassland looks like wastelands. So because no trees, then they're waste. I mean, so I was just wondering, I was trying to, I'm taking children to various places we go, and I try to connect to the topics in hand in the curriculum, not just in the younger level, but why not 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th? Why not those level children also can see those things around their place? We are in Bangalore. So Bangalore also, there would be so many, I mean, obviously we have been, destroying the wasteland, the habitats, but how is that really impacted us? Or how is it going to get impact, maybe after how many generations would we realize this? Practicality of seeing that this is happening. I mean, I just mixed up everything together, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, if you can make sense of what I said, if anybody could help me answering, I really want to make it connected to the curriculum of CBC and ICSE, and they're not going to change anytime soon, even though there is a what do you call, we have 2020 education policy, what is it called, which has come recently, education policy 2022, right, or 2020. So I mean, I'm just wondering, how do we really make connected to exams or to the books? Is my question. I'm through.
So, I mean, one of the questions you're asking is basically how do we transfer these play experiences to and connect them to real life contexts or situations? Yeah, that's a great question. I think that was something that
Literally to classroom. You know, people don't have
Specifically.
time. Otherwise, the children are already overburdened. Otherwise, I'm wondering, where do we create these spaces as teachers?
Okay.
I don't have space in the timetable. I'm trying to create visits and games as part of my classroom. Can somebody help me connect what's there in the chapter today and directly a game plays that and, it works? Can we do that? It's not easy, I know it, but can we reach there and how can we, teachers or maybe people, come together to make it happen?
All right. Would anybody like to take that question? Yeah, sure. Please go ahead,
Yeah.
Yuvan.
Okay, so your question about where to get the game I was speaking about, we've actually, we printed 350. We ran out of 350 in 1 month. So now we are going to reprint and we hope to procure funds to do it in Tamil as well. So that's kind of going on. Perhaps we'll put it up on social
because
media once.
you and I really found your game to be the closest to what I'm teaching. So I was just very interested in that.
Yeah. The other thing, at 𝗘𝗿𝗆 we've been working around is the pedagogy of nature-based learning as both an equalizing force and as something which improves academic achievement. In a way, so this is based on a fantastic paper which collates about more than 100 pieces of research from all over the world, not from India. Hope there will be soon, where it shows how the pedagogy of nature-based learning, which has different aspects. It could be outdoor, it could be something seeking connection to your local landscape. It is able to invoke something called intrinsic motivation in the child, which is the natural drive to seek connection or find meaning, as opposed to usual traditional classroom instruction, which is driven by its extrinsic motivation, strict teacher, exam, parents, all of that. And we've been actually applying that with disadvantaged communities here in Chennai, from the fisher community, domestic labor community, Dalit community, and so on, who actually have, because of various other challenges, their academic achievement is not the best. And we have a 10-month internship we do for middle school children, phenomenal results in language learning, science learning, through the child's own interest and passion, and not through kind of hacks and tactics of learning something, but through setting fire to that intrinsic motivation aspect. I've written a essay on this, of course, invited by Sujatha here, which if interested, I could share, looking at this pedagogy a bit more deeply. Thank you.
Shonali, a lot of questions have come in the chat.
Yeah, please go ahead, Abhi.
Yeah, so 𝗘𝗿𝗆𝗆, would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question?
So I have two questions, sir. What is the most vital thing for searching and understanding of habitats?
𝗘𝗿𝗆𝗆, could you repeat your question and got cut off a little bit in the middle?
What is the most vital thing for searching and understanding of habitats?
Searching. 𝗘𝗆𝗆 is part of our young birders workshop. I recognize them. Okay, so for searching and understanding habitats. Okay.
Yes.
Would anybody like to share?
Ready.
I mean, I think
Please.
it also links a little bit to what Deepika was asking. I think experience is, according to me, experience would be uppermost on the list for being able to understand any particular habitat, ecosystem, even issue. I think nothing can really replace a first-hand experience of something. And if that is not possible for some reason, and I think Deepika in what she was sharing did share some very valid challenges that are there in the education scenario, even today. I mean, it's the past few NEPs have spoken about, say, joyful learning, but how much of learning in our schools is actually joyful? It's not. Though our frameworks say it should be. Our framework talks about localized curriculum, learning for primary schools, but that also hasn't happened. So I'm just linking the two questions, what Deepika said and what you're asking. So in my view, the first thing would actually be an experience of the issue. I can give you one example. The very first time I visited, it was here in Pune, I visited a sorting shed for waste management. The place actually where our waste goes and gets sorted. I mean, it just shook me. And the first thought was, this is where learning would happen. It's just not, I mean, we all know what a huge issue urban waste is. And we read about it, we see pictures. But actually going into a sorting shed and seeing people working through the day, trying to sort out the waste that we generate, it hits you. And immediately we at that point, we were collaborating with the school, and we tried very hard that as part of the program, let's organize a visit for kids. But unfortunately, 3 times when we tried it, the school got back with some excuse. My gut feeling was at the end was that they didn't want kids to go to a waste place, a place that had waste. So I think first thing is experience. And if that direct experience can't come because there are challenges, like when we worked in Ladakh, there were many challenges. So then you have to just find other ways of trying to learn. So if you're talking about a habitat which 𝗷𝗫𝗍, which you want to learn about, but you can't visit, then you just have to find other ways of getting to know it. And there are films, there are stories, there are books, there are, I'm sure there are people like Yuvan and I don't know where you live, but people like Yuvan in your city who can take you on walks and explore the habitat, the ecosystem, the species with you.
So I would like to ask 𝗷𝗫𝗍 whether from where that interest, that question to know a habitat came. Like I'm really happy to hear that you want to know about some particular habitat. So why? From where? Why did that urge comes? What do you want to know? And how will that help you?
I'm new to this field, but I've seen many people do this. And my favorite was my aunt, who is a bird, and she got me into this field. She found out the interest inside me that I love watching birds. I love animals, so she helped me through this, and that's the feeling that got me to ask this question.
Okay, so you mean to say you saw your aunt studying birds and also their role in the habitat, different habitats, you mean to say? I mean, I just want to know, is it that you're wanting to know what are the different roles or niches of different species in a habitat? Or how are the birds, how are the birds connected to the different other species in an habitat? Or how it started with birds, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so so it's a curiosity which arose from, and as Sujatha really brought in, it's the visit to a place which makes a huge difference. And otherwise it's all on paper and it doesn't connect to us emotionally. Only that when we see it, I've seen that children in our school, we try to have annual trips to places like this. And what I'm trying to say, even field trips, we try to make it to even the solid waste management rules in Bangalore, how they changed. Before that, we visited the nearby, we live in Bangalore North, And nearby we have, dump yard, huge dump yard. Every time the granite quarry turns into a dump yard after all. So we went to even Baglu place where the dump yard first was a quarry, then a dump yard, and then it was changed to a garden. So that was an experiment which BBMP did. So we went to that also. So, and I could really see that there were so many science and social sciences principles which could be connected directly. We could see in that there were pipes which were releasing and there were leachates, there would be methane gas, there was leachate, we could collect that sample and go to a lab and do it. I'm just wanting if there could people who can come together, and it's not easy, but it's so much fruitful that who could, I don't know, you nature lovers could really do this. Come together and join and make it really happen in the classroom. It can really be done. And children could be all, the snake-like children could be all over.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for with these sessions. So thank you all for sharing. This is great that this is the first session where people are talking to each other, and that's what this is all about. So I'm afraid I think past our time. So thank you all for sharing and joining us. Thank you for your time and presentations to all of our speakers. It's been really a great session. We hope you all enjoyed it as much as we did putting it together. There's a link to a feedback form in the chat. Please do fill that out. That really helps us curate sessions in the future. And contact details of all of the speakers are there as well. By popular demand, a lot of people want to know more about your game, Sujatha, the Tulo game. So maybe we can share some of your game as a post on our social media in the coming weeks. Yeah, I think that's it from us. We'll wrap up this session. Please leave us feedback. Thank you, everybody. This was a great session. And please stay with us for the series. There will be more coming up. So follow our updates. We have a mailer and all of our events are announced there. So yeah, hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you so much.
We apologize to those of you who have typed your questions in the chat box and we couldn't take it because we ran out of time. But we've left the contact details of all the 3 speakers. So do reach out to them directly or to us also. Thank you.
I'm sorry if I've taken away too much of time. I'm really sorry. And I'm really happy you have conducted this session.
No, thank you, Deepika. No, we want more. It's great to have teachers from mainstream curriculum join these sessions and ask these questions and try to integrate nature into the classroom. So it's great. Please.
So Yuvan's contact details are there here? Yuvan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I've shared it in the chat. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks.
So maybe I'll keep this window open for 1 or 2 more minutes if you guys want to take information from the chat box.
I can share it once again.
Okay. Yeah, all 3 email IDs are there. You can teach them via email.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Thank you all. Thanks for staying with us and hope to see you all soon.
Yeah.